On Christmas Day, Mom said, "You won't last a month without us." Now they barely can afford a small apartment. Hard pass, sup, Reddit. I grew up in one of those families where favoritism wasn't just obvious, it was brutal. So I said, nah, screw them. Built my own life and moved on. This is going to be a long ride, but what happened to those people is worth the wait. Before we get to that, let me start from the beginning. I, Lamoon, 28 years old and female, was the older one. My brother came along 6 years after me. So when I was 12 and trying to get through school, he was 6 and already being treated like royalty. He could do no wrong. My parents were obsessed with him, like he was this miracle child. Me, I was just there, the kid who was tolerated but never really seen. I remember this one night in middle school. I came home with this little certificate from a math competition. Nothing huge, but I'd worked hard. And honestly, I was proud of myself. I walked into the kitchen, showed it to my mom, and she barely looked at it. She literally said, "That's nice, but it's not like math contests matter in the real world." And my dad didn't even glance up from the TV. He just muttered, "Your brother's the one who's going to do big things. You'll see." And then, like clockwork, my brother walked in, probably 10 years old at the time, and asked for a new iPhone. My mom's face lit up like it was the best request she'd ever heard. "Of course, sweetheart, you deserve it." My dad smiled and said, "We'll make it happen." Meanwhile, my certificate sat on the counter untouched, forgotten. Even chores showed the favoritism. I'd be the one washing dishes, mowing the lawn, cleaning my room, helping out with groceries. My brother, he'd be in his room playing video games. And if I dared complain, my mom would snap, "Don't bother him. He needs to rest. He's young." I wasn't much older, but apparently my childhood didn't count. It wasn't just at home either. Family gatherings were rough. Relatives would always hear my parents brag about my brother. "He's so smart, so talented, such a good boy." Then they'd look at me and go, "Oh, and how are you?" Like I was the footnote. I tried not to let it sting, but when you're a kid, it gets in your head. You start to believe you're less than. The worst part is how subtle it could be sometimes. My brother would make a dumb joke and everyone would laugh like he was the funniest kid alive. I'd say something actually witty, and I'd get a half smile at best. He'd get gifts for no reason. New games, clothes, gadgets. If I asked for something, I'd get a lecture about money not growing on trees. I think what really cemented it for me was when my brother started actually talking down to me. Even as a kid, he picked up on the favoritism and used it. He'd say stuff like, "Mom and Dad love me more," or "You're just jealous." And if I snapped back at him, guess who got in trouble? Yep, me. Always me. Looking back now, I see it was textbook narcissistic family dynamics. I can still hear my mom's voice sometimes, dismissive and cold. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" That line stuck with me for years, and it became the fuel I needed later. Growing up, Christmas was never fun for me. People always talk about it like it's this warm family holiday. But in my house, it was just another reminder of who mattered and who didn't. I told myself every year, next year will be different. It never was. The Christmas that changed everything. I was 19. I was already exhausted from years of being treated like the unwanted kid. I'd been working part-time at a store, saving whatever I could. My plan was to leave at some point, but I didn't know when. Turns out Christmas gave me the final push. We were all sitting at the table, turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, the whole thing. My brother was sitting there bragging about how he was going to take over the family business someday. He was barely 13, but my parents were nodding like he was a genius. He said something like, "When I'm in charge, I'll make it even bigger. Everyone will know our name." Mom replied, "You're so smart. You'll do amazing things." Then Dad added, "That's my boy." Then my mom looked at me like she suddenly remembered I was sitting there. "So, are you still working that little retail job?" I said, "Yeah." She sighed loudly and shook her head. "You should be more like your brother. Look at how ambitious he is." Dad continued, "Honestly, you're just drifting. No goals, no drive. I don't know how you'll survive on your own." And my brother laughed right in my face. "Yeah, maybe you should just work for me when I take over. I'll give you something easy, like cleaning the office." Everyone at the table laughed, except me. I sat there staring at my plate, gripping the fork so hard my knuckles hurt. Something broke in me that night. After dinner, it was time for presents. My brother tore into box after box. A brand new gaming console, designer sneakers, expensive headphones, a pile of gift cards. Then it was my turn. I pulled a small bag toward me. Inside, socks. 1 pair. My mom smiled like she'd just solved world hunger. Practical, right? You needed new ones. My brother snickered loud enough for everyone to hear. Wow, exciting. Don't spend it all at once. The room laughed. I forced a laugh too, but it came out bitter. Yeah, thanks. Just what I always wanted, socks, while he gets half them all. The room went quiet for a second, and my mom's smile dropped. Don't be ungrateful. Your brother works hard. He deserves what he gets. I stared at her. He's 13. He doesn't even make his own bed. What exactly is he working hard at? My brother jumped in instantly, grinning. At being better than you. The laughter started again, louder this time, and I felt my chest tighten. My dad shook his head. You always have to ruin things. Always jealous. Maybe if you weren't so lazy, we'd be proud of you too. I leaned back in my chair, smirked, and said flatly, yeah, because nothing screams pride like handing everything to someone who hasn't earned it. Guess socks are the perfect gift for the family disappointment, huh? My brother's grin slipped for the first time. My mom snapped, enough. Stop acting like a victim. This is why you'll never get anywhere. I shrugged, cold as ice. Then don't be surprised when I stop coming back here. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Nobody laughed after that. That night, I went up to my room and sat on the bed, looking at that 1 pair of socks. It wasn't about the socks. It was the years of being treated like I didn't matter, like I was less than human. I pulled out the small stash of cash I'd been saving from my job. It wasn't much, but it was enough for first month's rent at the crappy little apartment I'd found a few weeks earlier. I had already scoped it out, but hadn't committed yet. At that moment, I knew I was done waiting. I packed my clothes into 2 duffel bags, grabbed my books and my secondhand laptop. That was pretty much all I owned. As I walked downstairs, my mom saw me with the bags. Mom frowned, arms crossed. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. Dad snapped instantly. Don't be stupid. It's Christmas. Exactly, I shot back. And I'd rather be alone than sit here being laughed at in my own family. The air went cold. My mom's eyes narrowed. Then she scoffed. You won't last a month without us. I smirked. Then you won't have to put up with me for very long, will you? Dad's voice rose. Go ahead, but don't come crawling back when you fail. I leaned toward him just slightly, steady and calm. Don't worry, crawling's always been his job. I nodded at my brother. He leaned back in his chair with that smug grin he always wore. Good luck being a loser on your own. I looked him dead in the eye. Better a loser on my own than a king on a leash. And just like that, I walked out. On Christmas night, while everyone else was watching holiday movies or drinking cocoa, I was carrying 2 bags across town to a half-empty apartment. The apartment was tiny, 1 bedroom, peeling paint, carpet that smelled weird. My bed was just a mattress on the floor. I sat there in the cold, eating leftover instant noodles from my job shift the day before, and listened to the sound of people celebrating outside. Leaving on Christmas made it sting more for them. I think they couldn't pretend everything was perfect anymore. Their scapegoat had walked away right in the middle of their favorite holiday. When I left on Christmas, part of me thought maybe my family would finally notice. But nah, that didn't happen. The spotlight was all his, and my parents couldn't get enough. From what I heard, not long after I left, my parents handed him the family business. He was barely out of school, no experience, no clue how the real world worked. But to them, he was some prodigy. They treated him like a genius before he'd done a single thing. Meanwhile, I was working long shifts in retail, trying to keep my tiny apartment afloat, eating ramen every night. The contrast made me sick, but it also became kind of normal. My mom would still call me once in a while, but never to ask how I was doing. Every call was basically just a bragging session about him. Your brother is doing so well. He's such a natural leader. We're just so proud of him. That's how every conversation started and ended. I'd try to slip in something about myself, like how I was keeping up with bills, or how I was picking up extra hours. She'd barely acknowledge it, then circle back to him. After a while, I stopped trying. Sometimes I'd still get pulled into family gatherings. I'd sit there and watch my parents parade him around like a trophy. Look at our boy already running the business, already thinking ahead. He's such a blessing. They beamed with pride every time he opened his mouth. Then someone would politely ask about me, and the whole vibe would change. My mom's face would flatten, and she'd say something like, "Oh, she's working somewhere. She's fine." That was it. I wasn't amazing. I wasn't ambitious. I wasn't anything. Just fine. Then it wasn't just words either. My parents spoiled him rotten in ways I couldn't even believe. First, it was one house, a giant place worth over $1 million. Then another one, even bigger, worth more than $1.5 million, right next door to their own. They wanted him close forever. Their pride and joy living just a few steps away. My mom once said to me, "It's so nice having him nearby. We'll always be together as a family." She didn't even realize the irony. We, as if I wasn't part of that sentence. By then his ego was massive. He acted like he was untouchable. He'd walk around like he owned the town, talking down to people, throwing money around, showing off his cars and clothes. He started to believe he was born above everyone else. And my parents fed into it nonstop. They were his biggest fans, his cheerleaders, his safety net. I was walking home from work one evening, still in my wrinkled shirt from a long shift. My grocery bag was heavy in my hand, filled with basics like bread, eggs, and pasta. As I cut across the parking lot, I saw him leaning against a shiny car my parents had basically gifted him. Sunglasses on, even though the sun was nearly gone, arms crossed, smirk plastered across his face like he was in a magazine ad. He straightened up as soon as he saw me. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Still walking around like a nobody. Don't you get tired of carrying bags home like some broke student?" I kept walking. Didn't even look at him, but he wasn't going to let me pass. He stepped right into my path. "Seriously, what do you even make?" he pushed. "Barely enough to survive, right? Look at me. 2 houses, 3 cars. Vacations whenever I want. You ran away from all of this just so you could what? Walk to the bus stop like a loser?" I stopped and looked at him. No emotion, no anger, just flat. At least what I have is mine. For half a second, his smirk slipped, but then he laughed, loud and fake. "Yours? That tiny paycheck? That's nothing. I wiped my ass with that. You think bagging groceries and fixing computers makes you a woman? You'll never be on my level. Never." He started circling me, still talking like he was performing. "You know the difference between us? When I walk in a room, people notice. They respect me. They know I matter. You're invisible, always have been, always will be." I adjusted the grocery bag on my shoulder, looked him dead in the eye, and said coldly, "Your so-called respect is rented, not owned. And when the money's gone, so is the illusion." That one landed. His fists clenched. He sneered. "You think you're better than me. You'll never be more than average. You can keep playing house with your little job, but deep down, you know you're nothing without us." I stepped closer, close enough he couldn't mistake what I was saying. "I know exactly who I am. And unlike you, I don't need them to breathe. I don't need anyone." For the first time, he had nothing. He just stood there, face red, sputtering. Finally, he spat, "Keep lying to yourself," and stormed back to his car, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the lot. I shifted the grocery bag in my hand and kept walking, calm. No sadness, no anger, just cold indifference. He wanted me to break down, to snap, to prove I was still the weak one, but I wasn't, not anymore. The years that came after were some of the toughest of my life, and there were times I honestly thought about giving up and crawling back just for the security, but I never did. That first apartment was so small it barely counted as one. You could stand in the middle of the room, stretch your arms, and touch both walls. The carpet had stains I couldn't scrub out, and the heater only half worked. My bed was a mattress on the floor with no frame. I didn't even have a proper table. I ate most meals sitting on a folding chair with a plate balanced on my lap. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I worked retail back then, barely making enough to cover rent and groceries. Most weeks I was down to coins by the end of the month. There were nights I had to decide between keeping the lights on or buying enough food. Some nights I'd boil pasta with nothing but butter and salt because that's all I had. I remember one Christmas about 2 years after I left. My brother had apparently just been given another car by my parents. Some fancy brand new thing. My mom called me to brag about it like she always did. "Your brother is so responsible. He deserves it." I was sitting there staring at my overdue bill notices, and I couldn't help but laugh. Responsible. He hadn't worked a day in his life. Everything he had was handed to him. But in her eyes, he could do no wrong. There were nights I broke down. I'd sit on the mattress, head in my hands, and wonder if they were right. Maybe I'd always be a failure. But then I'd remember the way my brothers smirked at me on that last Christmas, telling me I'd be a loser without them, and something in me refused to give him the satisfaction of being right. I bounced between jobs a lot during that time. Retail, food service, even warehouse work. None of it paid much, but I kept hustling. I applied to hundreds of better jobs, most of which rejected me. Still, I didn't stop. I knew if I just kept grinding, something would eventually click. There were small victories that kept me going, saving up enough to buy my first decent piece of furniture, like a proper bed frame, fixing up a used laptop, realizing I could teach myself some basic coding online. At night, I started teaching myself coding. Free courses online, YouTube tutorials, forums. At first, it was frustrating. I'd write code that didn't work and feel like smashing the keyboard. But slowly things clicked, and with every small breakthrough, I felt myself growing. One of the hardest conversations I had with my dad came during this time. I ran into him randomly when I was visiting a friend. He gave me that look, the one he always gave when he thought I was beneath him. "So," he said, eyeing me up and down, "you're still working those little jobs?" He smirked. "Don't you get tired of being average?" I shifted my weight, steadying the grocery bag in my hand, and looked him straight in the eye. My voice was even, calm. "At least I'm doing it on my own." He snorted, shaking his head. "On your own. Don't kid yourself. You'll be crawling back eventually. You're not built for real success." His jaw tightened as he spoke like he was daring me to argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the words land quietly. "I'd rather crawl on my own than be carried on a leash." His eyes narrowed instantly. He stepped in closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. "Watch your mouth," he hissed. "You wouldn't last a day if it weren't for us. Everything you know, everything you are, came from me and your mother." His finger jabbed toward my chest, his face red. I didn't move back. My voice stayed cold. "Everything I am came from surviving you and her. Don't mix that up." His face twisted. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists were clenched. He leaned forward, practically spitting his words. "You think you're strong? You're pathetic. You'll regret turning your back on your family. One day you'll come crawling and I'll be the one to slam the door." I didn't blink. My expression didn't change. "If that day comes, it'll be because I chose it, not because I need you. And you can't slam a door that was never open for me in the first place." His mouth opened, then closed. He glared at me with pure hatred in his eyes, like he wanted to break me right there, but he didn't. He turned on his heel, shoulders tense, and walked away without another word. I didn't argue, I just let him walk away. But I promised myself silently that one day I'd prove him wrong. But it forced me to grow in ways my brother never had to. He was pampered. I was forged in fire. After a couple of years of scraping by, something finally shifted. It wasn't sudden, just slow, steady progress that built up until I realized my life didn't feel like drowning anymore. I was still working those retail and warehouse jobs when I saw an ad online for an IT support position at a mid-sized company. The pay wasn't huge, about $45,000 a year, but compared to what I was making, it felt like winning the lottery. I had always been decent with computers, fixing my own busted laptop, helping friends set up Wi-Fi, troubleshooting little things. I figured, why not? I applied, half expecting to get rejected like usual, but they called me for an interview. I still remember sitting there in my one decent button-up shirt, sweating bullets. The guy interviewing me asked a ton of technical questions. Some I knew, some I didn't. But I guess I was honest and showed I was willing to learn because 2 weeks later, they called me with an offer. I started the next Monday. That job changed everything. For the first time, I had a consistent paycheck that actually covered my bills without leaving me with an empty wallet by week 2. I could buy groceries without triple checking my bank balance. I could pay rent on time without begging for extra shifts. I could finally breathe. I didn't waste time. I showed up early, stayed late, and tried to learn everything I could. I fixed computers, answered tickets, set up equipment, sometimes even cleaned up server closets. It wasn't glamorous, but I cared. After years of being told I was worthless, I wanted to prove to myself, not even to them, that I could do this. After about a year, my manager called me into his office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, he said, "We've noticed how hard you work. We'd like to promote you to IT specialist." The raise wasn't insane, but going from $45,000 to $65,000 felt massive. Plus, benefits, health insurance, paid time off, stuff my brother would take for granted, but to me was life-changing. I celebrated in my own way. I'd been saving every spare dollar, eating cheap meals, avoiding luxuries. So, when that promotion came, I finally let myself have something I'd wanted since I was a teenager: a motorcycle. It wasn't brand new, just a used model I found online, but when I rode it home for the first time, wind in my face, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. That was mine. I also treated myself to a PlayStation 4. It sounds small, but after years of struggling, sitting down at night to play video games felt like reclaiming a part of my childhood I never got to enjoy. I'd work during the day, study coding at night, and on weekends, I'd go for long rides or lose myself in a game. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about it. It wasn't an overnight change, but as the years went on, I noticed a shift in myself. I was calmer. I didn't feel the constant weight of being judged. I didn't wake up every day waiting for someone to remind me I wasn't enough. I was enough, and I was proving it with every paycheck, every skill learned, every little milestone. Sometimes I'd still hear my parents' voices in my head. You won't last a month without us. But then I'd look around at my apartment, my motorcycle parked outside, the job I had worked my ass off to get, and I'd think, I lasted. I lasted without you, and I'm still here. For a long time, I thought my brother would just keep coasting forever. He had the business, the houses, my parents wrapped around his finger. From the outside, it looked like he was set for life, and maybe that's what he thought too. But the thing about being handed everything is you never learn how to actually take care of it. You don't learn responsibility when you've always had someone cleaning up after you. At first, I only heard whispers. A friend who knew someone that worked for him mentioned that people were quitting, money was disappearing, and people were saying he was more interested in showing off than actually working. My parents, of course, kept up appearances. They'd still call me bragging about how hardworking he was, how innovative his ideas were, but I could hear it in their voices. Cracks were forming. One time my mom slipped. She said, "Your brother is under so much stress. Running a business is hard. You wouldn't understand." I asked what kind of stress, and she snapped, "Don't be nosy. Just worry about yourself." That was the first time I realized they were covering for him. Turns out he was. The cracks started to show. He stopped bragging as much. My mom's phone calls, which used to be full of endless stories about his success, got shorter. She still bragged, of course, but you could hear the strain in her voice. I asked once if everything was okay, and she snapped at me. "Why are you always so negative? You should be proud of your brother." That was the tell. When they got defensive, it meant the rumors were true. Then it wasn't whispers anymore. People in town started talking openly about how the business was going downhill fast. Contracts were being lost, clients were walking away, and vendors weren't getting paid on time. My brother, the so-called prodigy, was drowning. But instead of admitting it, he doubled down on arrogance. I saw him once around this time at a gas station of all places. He was still driving one of his fancy cars, but you could see the stress on his face. He spotted me and immediately went on the attack like he always did. "Well, look who it is," he said. "Enjoying your little desk job, filing papers, fixing printers, being everyone's errand girl?" He tilted his head, grinning. "Meanwhile, I'm dealing with real problems. You wouldn't understand what it's like to be responsible for something big." I didn't take the bait. I just gave him a thin smile. "Yeah, looks like it." His face turned red, his chest puffing up like he was about to explode. "You smug little—" he started, but he stopped himself. His voice cracked just slightly, and he knew I heard it. That made him even angrier. "You think you're winning just because you can afford groceries now? Pathetic. You'll always be beneath me." I adjusted the grocery bag in my hand. Steady, calm. "You're confusing loud with powerful. You've always been loud, but now you're just loud and broke." Not long after, the whole thing collapsed. The business went under. My brother declared bankruptcy. Those houses my parents had bought him, they turned into anchors, dragging him deeper. He couldn't keep up with the costs. And suddenly, the golden boy wasn't shining anymore. The fallout hit my parents hard too. They had poured everything into him, money, resources, even their own savings. They believed he was their ticket to a legacy, that he'd take care of them when they got older. Instead, he dragged them down with him. They went from bragging constantly to going quiet. And when they did call me, it wasn't to brag anymore, it was to beg. My mom called one night, her voice tighter than usual. "We're going through a difficult time. You're doing well now, right? Maybe you could help us out a little." I almost laughed. "Help you out after everything?" She didn't flinch. "Families should support each other after all we've done for you." That line made my blood boil. After all they'd done for me? What exactly was that? Neglect? Insults? I bit my tongue and just said, "I can't." But they didn't stop. My dad called next. "You need to step up. We gave your brother everything so he could succeed, but things happen. Now it's your turn to give back." I told him flat out, "You never gave me anything. Don't try to rewrite history." He got angry like he always did when I didn't bend. "Ungrateful. That's what you are. Heartless." And then he hung up. The guilt trips kept coming, but I was done. I wasn't the scared kid at their dinner table anymore. I was an adult with my own life, built by my own effort. They had made their choices, and this was the result. The wildest part was my brother. Even broke, even failing, he still acted like he was above me. He cornered me one afternoon, still trying to act like he was in control, even though everyone knew he was broke. His clothes looked cheaper than before, but the arrogance was the same. "Don't think for a second you're better than me," he sneered. "You just got lucky. I had houses, cars, respect. People knew who I was. You're still nothing." I smirked, tilting my head. "Yeah, funny how all that respect vanished the second your credit dried up. Almost like they only liked your wallet, not you." His eyes narrowed. "Shut up. You'll never be on my level. You'll always be the pathetic one, walking around with your little job while I was running an empire." The delusion was real. I chuckled. "Empire? You mean the business Mom and Dad gift-wrapped for you? The one you managed to sink faster than the Titanic? Yeah, real impressive." His face turned red. "You don't know what you're talking about. Running a business is stressful." "Right?" I cut in, raising an eyebrow. "So stressful, you couldn't even keep employees from quitting in droves. So stressful, you burned through money like a kid in a candy store. You weren't a boss. You were a spoiled kid playing dress-up." He stepped closer, trying to tower over me. "Say that again." I leaned in just slightly, voice calm, almost amused. "You're broke, dependent, and still bragging like you're a king. But kings don't beg their sisters for help, do they?" He clenched his fists, sputtering, trying to come up with something. "You're just jealous. You'll never be as important as me." I smiled coldly. "You're right. I'll never be like you because I don't need Mommy and Daddy to bankroll my life. I don't need a kingdom built on lies. I've got something you'll never have, freedom." That last word hung in the air. He went silent, jaw working like he wanted to spit something out, but nothing came. His arrogance cracked for just a moment, and in that silence, he knew I'd won. He turned away, muttering under his breath, and walked off with his head down. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice, leaving. Because while they were chained to each other, dragging themselves down, I was free. When everything came crashing down for my brother and my parents, it was like watching a movie I'd already predicted years before. I always knew their little kingdom was built on sand, but seeing it actually collapse, that was something else. For the first time in my life, they needed me. The same people who told me I wouldn't last a month on my own were suddenly on the phone, hinting, asking, begging for help. I remember the first time my mom really came out and said it. "You're doing well now, right? Maybe you could support us a little. Family helps family." The audacity almost made me laugh. Family helps family. That was never true when I was the one struggling. My dad tried too, but in his usual angry way. He called me one night and started lecturing before I even said hello. "You're selfish. You've turned your back on your family. We gave your brother everything so he could take care of us, and he's going through a rough patch. Now it's your responsibility to step up. You can't abandon your family." I let him rant, then said, "You didn't give me anything. You spent my entire life tearing me down. Don't try to rewrite history now." He called me ungrateful, heartless, every word he could throw. But it didn't land. Not anymore. I just hung up. They didn't stop, though. The guilt trips kept coming in waves. It got so bad at one point that they actually showed up at my job. I was at my desk mid-shift. I looked up and saw them standing there in the lobby like they owned the place. My mom had that fake sad look plastered on her face. My dad standing stiff beside her with his arms crossed. I walked over, keeping my voice low. "What are you doing here?" My mom wasted no time. "We've been calling and you never answer. You never visit us anymore. Do you know how hurtful that is? We're your parents. You're supposed to be there for us. I crossed my arms. I'm at work. You can't just show up here. My dad jumped in, voice sharp. Don't talk to your mother like that. She's right. You've abandoned us. You sit here making money, and you don't even think about helping your family after everything we gave you. I actually laughed. Everything you gave me? You mean the years of neglect and lectures about how I'd never survive? Yeah, thanks for that. My mom's eyes narrowed. The sad act slipped. You're cold, heartless. We raised you. You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for us, and this is how you treat us? I tilted my head. Funny, I exist just fine without you, haven't I? My dad leaned in. You're going to regret this. One day you'll come crawling back. I gave him the smallest smirk. You've been waiting for that day for years. Still hasn't come, has it? For a second, they both just stood there fuming. My coworkers were pretending not to watch, but I could feel eyes on us. I didn't care. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't the weak one in this scene. I pointed toward the door. You need to leave. I've got work to do. If you want someone to bankroll you, go find the golden child. Oh, wait, you already tried that, didn't you? My dad's face went red. My mom muttered something about me being ungrateful, and they turned and walked out. I went right back to work, calm, confident, and unshaken. The shift was obvious, even to them. The whole power dynamic had flipped, and they couldn't handle it. Things only went downhill for them. The business was gone. The money was gone. And all those houses they used to brag about, one by one, sold off just to cover debts. And my brother, oh man, he still refused to accept reality. He sat around like he was too good for an ordinary job. My dad even suggested he take something entry-level just to keep afloat. He exploded. Me? Work like some average nobody? Do you know who I am? I'm not wasting my time with that. He really believed he was still royalty, even though he was broke and living in a shoebox. Meanwhile, my life was moving in the opposite direction. All the years of grinding finally paid off. My boss called me in one morning and said, "We've been impressed with your work. We'd like to promote you to senior lead." The salary jump was huge, double what I'd started with years before. So when people ask if I regret leaving, even with all the struggles I went through, I tell them no. Walking out on Christmas night was the best decision I ever made. From the outside, people probably thought I cut my family off completely. But the truth is, I didn't need to. They were the ones who built the wall. All I did was stop banging my head against it. My brother still tried to posture every now and then, but it never landed the same. He'd make little digs on social media, hinting that I was bitter or jealous, but everyone who knew the truth could see right through it. His empire was gone, his houses were gone, and the shine had worn off. Meanwhile, my life was steady. Not glamorous, not flashy, but mine. I had a career, my own apartment, my own stability, and eventually, I even had peace. That's something they never gave me, peace. Sometimes I'd sit in my place after work, motorcycle parked outside, bills paid on time, and think about that Christmas night when I walked away. I had been terrified then, shaking, carrying 2 duffel bags into the unknown. My mom's voice had echoed in my head, "You won't last a month without us." But years later, I was still here, thriving, and they were the ones struggling. The irony wasn't lost on me. It would be easy to say I felt vindicated, and sometimes I did, but mostly I just felt free. Free from the constant comparison, the endless guilt trips, the invisible weight of never being enough. I realized something important. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, who supports you, who sees you, and for me, that was never them. It was the friends I made, the coworkers who had my back, the mentors who believed in me. My parents and brother wanted me to crawl. They wanted me to come back defeated so they could feel powerful again. But I never gave them that satisfaction. One day I ran into my mom at the grocery store. She looked older, more worn down than I remembered. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Lamoon," she said softly, "we miss you. Things are hard." I looked at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to feel sorry, wanted to forgive, but then I remembered the years of being invisible, the Christmas of socks, the laughter at my expense, the way they had torn me down every chance they got. I shook my head. "I hope things work out for you." That was all I said before walking away. I didn't owe her more. I didn't owe any of them more. The truth is, I built my own life from the ashes of theirs. I learned how to fight, how to stand, how to breathe without their approval. And in the end, I won. Not because I was richer or more successful, but because I was free. Free from the leash, free from the cage, free from their version of love that was always conditional, always cruel. And if I could go back to that Christmas night when I packed my bags and walked out the door, I'd do it again 1,000 times over. Because leaving wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning.